All right, let's jump right into today's explainer. We are embarking on an absolutely mind-bending journey here, a place where the strict, totally unyielding rules of formal computer logic just collide head-on with esoteric, ancient philosophy. We're going to look at a project that doesn't just try to, model the universe. No, it attempts to actually prove it, mathematically, as finite code. It's this incredibly ambitious, honestly slightly surreal synthesis of physics, computation, and mysticism. And it's all written in a programming language that was literally designed just for mathematical proofs. So get ready, because we're about to completely rethink how we map reality. Okay, let's dive into this. We are looking at an astounding 151 files. And get this, according to the metadata, this entire repository was generated today, May 4th, 2026. This isn't just a handful of random scripts, guys. It's a completely bizarre, sprawling mathematical repository that's collectively referred to as Gnosis math. And what makes this collection so fascinating, so totally captivating, is the sheer audacity of its scope. It's basically this massive interconnected web of formal logic that attempts to define the absolute boundaries of computation and, well, existence itself. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of this project. It is visually overwhelming. We're seeing file names that mash together entirely disparate fields of human knowledge, stuff that really shouldn't be together. You have files bridging astrobiology and meteorology, cosmology and cryptography. There's even something here called the Cross-Domain Oceanography Architecture Network Bridge. It essentially treats the laws of physics, the flow of global economics, and even the structure of human language as if they are all just different topological shapes, all waiting to be routed through the exact same mathematical engine. Now, to actually understand how this universe operates, we have to understand its super strict coding rules. The author calls this the rustic church doctrine. So in standard automated mathematics, computers are often allowed to, well, guess. They use these things called heuristic search spaces to hunt for a proof, basically trying thousands of different paths until something finally works. But the rustic church doctrine, it explicitly forbids this. No guessing allowed. It forces the code to prove theorems using only definitional unfolding and basic structurally inductive lemmas. Think of it like writing the laws of physics as a rigid, totally impenetrable legal contract where absolutely nothing is left to chance or interpretation. So here is the crucial point. This framework explicitly, completely rejects standard infinite math. Classical mathematics, as we know it, relies on continuous analysis, right? Real numbers, infinite category theory, unbounded sets. Well, this project takes all of that and throws it out of bounds. Instead, it replaces continuous dynamics with finite, discrete, terminating topologies. And you might be wondering, why? Why do that? Well, the authors claim that by removing all those black box guessing games, this finite state machine routing becomes structurally inevitable. And on a more practical level, they claim this approach makes evaluating the proofs over 800 times faster than generalized heuristic provers. 800 times! It is a radical rejection of infinity in favor of absolute provable finitude. So, with 151 files covering literally everything from the Big Bang to the mechanics of human consciousness, trying to digest the whole thing at once is, well, it's impossible. So let's play a little game. What happens if we treat this massive repository like a giant roulette wheel, give it a spin, and open just one random file to see exactly how this rustic church doctrine operates in practice? Let's take a look. Let's see where we land. Okay. Dimensional ladder.lean. We're going to dramatically slow our pace down right here to unpack this specific code, step by step. Because while the title sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi novel, the code inside is pure, hard logic. It's attempting to construct a literal hierarchy of dimensions, starting from absolute nothingness all the way up to the ultimate boundary of reality. This file ambitiously maps out the complete emanation hierarchy of reality. And notice how it borrows this really heavy terminology from Gnosticism, the ancient religious movement, but it embeds it entirely within the syntax of the Lean 4 proof assistant language. It's creating a ladder of dimensions. It starts down at what it calls bythos at dimension 0 and climbs all the way up to something called the pleroma. Let's map out the first half of this dimensional ladder exactly as the code itself specifies it. At 0D, we have bythos, which is also called the monad, basically the point right before emanation. From there, we jump to 2D, called barbello, mathematically modeled as a 1 torus, or a circle. Then up to 4D, the proton, modeled as a 3 torus, where the code actually claims 3 quarks achieve dimensional confinement. Then up to 6D, the primitive, a 5 torus. According to the notes in the code, each level is formed by a Willington rotation of the level directly below it. Basically, you take a lower dimensional shape, you rotate it through an entirely new mathematical dimension, and boom, you generate the next level of physical reality. As we finish climbing the ladder, the jumps start getting much, much larger. From 6D, we move all the way to 11-dimensional space, which the code calls the Konoma, represented as a 10 torus. Now, the code describes this level as the gauge field, which is where particle positions are predicted. And finally, the ladder reaches its absolute peak at the 56th dimension. This is the pleroma, modeled as a 55 torus. In Gnostic terms, the pleroma is the totality of divine powers. But in this codebase, it is the ultimate, terminating complexity of the entire topological universe. Now, what is really fascinating here is how the code uses just simple, hard arithmetic to prove the scale of this final dimension. The code literally contains a theorem named pleroma emanations. It calculates that in a 55 torus geometry, you just multiply 55 by 54 to get exactly 2,970. The computer then formally verifies this arithmetic using the decide command. It is using a basic, straightforward integer proof to state that exactly 2,970 emanations exist at the absolute boundary of reality. There's no infinity, no guesswork at all, just a hard, verifiable integer limit. But the file goes even further. It incorporates one of the most famous equations in all of mathematics, Euler's identity. You know the one, e to the power of I times pi plus 1 equals 0. The code boldly maps the components of this identity directly to these Gnostic entities. The constant e is the demiurge. The imaginary unit squared, I squared equals -1, is the syzygy, representing an anti-parallel back-and-forth period. Pi is named Lorenzo. The +1 is Barbelo, which it calls the sliver, and the 0, well, that's the ground state. This completely creates a framework where complex mathematical constants and ancient esoteric philosophy are essentially spoken as the exact same language. The author summarizes this mapping with a deeply poetic comment buried right there in the middle of the proof. It reads, "The fold applied through oscillation over one full period plus the sliver reaches truth. The whip never stops." This sentence acts as a perfect bridge. Think about it. Oscillation over one full period is the mathematical rotation of pi and the imaginary number. The sliver is the integer one, and reaching truth is returning to the absolute zero of the ground state. It is pure computation just dressed up in abstract cosmic philosophy. We've really just scratched the surface of one file out of 151 here. This repository strips away infinity, it strips away heuristic guessing and continuous space, and it replaces all of them with a strict, verifiable ladder of dimensions that ends exactly at dimension 56. It's a fascinating and incredibly rigid way to interpret existence, and I think it leaves us with a lingering question to take away from today's explainer. If the entirety of the universe, from its dimensions to its physics to its very consciousness, can theoretically be formally verified as finite, discrete code, what does that make us? Are we the observers? Or are we just another verifiable line of code in the Konoma? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the code of reality.